moment I'm the ranger for Silverdale Country Park. Silverdale Country Park is on the site of the old Silverdale colliery, which led European coal production for many years. The site we're looking at now is right on the edge of an area called Waste Farm. There used to be a farm called Waste Farm, that's where it gets its name from, but it used to be an ironworks here in the 1860s as well. Now the area has been grassed over and turned into a country park, and there's lots of wildflower species in here. The yellow flowers in behind me are a bird's foot trefoil, which is the food plant of quite a rare butterfly that we've just seen flying past us called the dingy skipper. We've also got areas of woodland in behind us as well. There's an area of woodland that goes right the way through the middle of the park, dividing up Waste Farm from the rest of the park. Named it Miners Retreat Woods, linking back to that history, and the name itself was given to it by local primary school children. And again, the woodland is filled with different wildlife and bats and all sorts of different species as well. And the ex-miners formed a fishing club many years ago. Still got that link with the site now, so we're fishing this area. It's closed off to the general public, but you can join and fish that pool, which is fantastic. That's what fern is called. This is a plant called San Juan, which has had a red-tailed bumblebee sort of feeding off the nectar from it. We don't have any protected species of plants on the park, but we do have plants that are particularly rare and are declining in the country, such as orchids and plants like this San Juan, which is a member of the pea family. It looks very similar to a lupin, but the leaves are a bit different. This is the only place on the park where you can find it. It's just down by Scotto Road near Furness Pool. Quite pretty with the pink. Mid-June's always a special time on the country park. One of my favourites, the Burnet Moth. Comes out, you can see the red and black, the colouring of the wings is absolutely fantastic, and they'll fly around the park by the hundred. You can see all the cases on all sorts of different vegetation. You can see one just emerging here from the casing, but there you go, surrounding us. It's really special. In behind us as well, we're right on the edge of some seasonal pools that we've got in the corner of Waste Farm. Fantastic for the great crested newts, amphibians, and some of the water-loving birds that we've got on the park as well. We've got some rubble in behind us, which doesn't look particularly great when you first look at it, but it's filled with nooks and crannies, covered with vegetation. And this is ideal refuge habitat, so a safe haven for our great crested newts and other species of amphibian, and some reptiles as well, to hide away and escape predators. So it's a valuable part of the country park. This is Victory Pool. It's on the corner of the park near Scott Hay. We've just seen a heron fly off. There's a heron here most days. We've also seen kingfisher. We've got lots of species of fish in here, carp and all sorts. It's also really good in about a month's time, sort of August time, late July, when the dragonflies and damselflies start to come out, and you can actually watch them breeding right on the water's edge just down here, which is fantastic to see. We're on one of the banks just around the back of Victory Pool in the corner of the park. Particularly pleased because we've got these Marsh Orchids all over this bank this year. It's a really good year, I think, because it's been so wet for Marsh Orchids. We've also got this plant here called a yellow rattle, so not the buttercups, but the yellow flower that you can see, which is hemiparasitic, so it beats up other plants, which sounds bad, but wildflower meadows actually need poor soils, and this actually helps other wildflowers stand a chance to compete against grasses and things like that. So having yellow rattle is a real success for the park, and we've been trying to sow it on here for 2-3 years. So to have a carpet of it all around us here, we're really pleased about, and that's down to the hard work of the students and the volunteers that work on here. The park's over 200 acres in size, and there's a horse route. This is part of it, which is just under 2.5 miles, so the horse riders can ride around the park. Cyclists can use it as well, as can people walking their dogs or just enjoying a nice walk. And it's also nice to see the butterflies and bats and birds using it as a bit of a corridor travelling around the park as well. So we had great fun over the winter planting. That's about 5,000 trees with school children and volunteers, which has been fantastic. People of all ages have really enjoyed being out here. But as you can see, the woodlands themselves are relatively young, but even so, they're establishing well. It's hard to imagine this used to be a spoil heap. Welcome to High Lane Void. So this is probably the showpiece of the park, really. It's hard to imagine that in the 1980s this was an open cast mine, 10 times the depth of what you can see now, extracting the coal. This has actually been infilled now, and they've created some seasonal pools down to the left and a large pool, southern pool, down on the bottom. It's fantastic for all sorts of ground nesting bird, lapwing, skylark, clubbing plover, dingy skipper butterfly, all of which are protected. But it's absolutely stunning, which whichever time of year you come through here, whether it's carpeted in snow, whether it's carpeted in the Burnet trefoil and other yellow plants you can see around us, such as the buttercups, or in autumn when it starts to get quite bleak on here as well. Quite impressive. We're stood by Southern Pool again, right next to what we've got is a water tap and a valve underneath us. Southern Pool, like I say, is filled up by runoff from rainfall, but we can't control the water coming in, but we can actually release the water. The main purpose of the pool is actually to stop the surrounding area from flooding. So we catch the water in this big pool and then we slowly release it so that we don't get a surge going through the waterways nearby. We're currently opening the tap at the moment and releasing a bit of the water because the water levels got up above and some of the fishing pegs are a bit soggy at the moment. So just letting some of the water out to do that. The bird song you can hear is Skylarks. We're in the seasonal pools in the void area. Skylarks are a protected species of bird, they're grand nesting. We've also got lapwing you can just about hear as well. Maybe not. That are nesting in this area as well, just been swooping past us. The grass is to our left, just one or two species, so it's really poor from a biodiversity point of view. So we're trying to encourage wildflowers. So what we've done is we've scraped an area and we've created this trial plot. Planted up with wildflower seed, and you can see there's insects and wildlife all around us now around this plot. So the hope is to spread these wildflowers around the park. We've got beautiful corn chamomile, and you can smell it when you're up close. Cornflowers over there with the blue, and all this purple here of the corncockle is looking fantastic. We've also got oxeye daisy in here. There's some nice red poppies intermingled in there as well. There's lots of sort of white campion and red campion as well. So it's been an absolute treat watching this develop and all the colour that's come up. And then the wildlife and the insects and the butterflies we've seen moving through this area and the bees as well. So hopefully we should see more of this around the park as we work with our volunteers to spread the seed and use it as a donor really for the rest of the grasslands and meadows around the park. Over the past 2 years we've been planting lots of hedgerow around the country park. Hedgerow is a declining habitat. We didn't have very much on the park at all, so we've had trees donated kindly by the Woodland Trust, and you can see how this area here was planted in the March, and a bit later on you can see how the trees were a lot shorter. They were planted in the following sort of September, October, so they had one less growing season. So it's amazing how much difference there is just in one summer, an extra 3 foot of growth just from having that extra summer of light, water and sunshine. We're by the side of what we call the header pool here, right next to a new housing estate. Heritage Park Housing is 350 homes that have been built on the site of what was the pit head, so where all the mine buildings were for Silverdale Colliery. It was all part of something called the Silverdale Vision, where local residents went to Brussels to campaign for the area and stop it becoming a landfill. Instead we've now got some housing, and right down to the builders themselves have all got to live within, 75% of the workforce have got to live within 10 miles of the building site. They're not allowed to have any pubs or shops, so it's really trying to encourage local regeneration, bring people back to the area. We've had some fun down here this winter as well. We had 3,500 trees donated by Aspire Housing, so we've planted those with the help of volunteers, pensioners groups, school children, students, apprentices as well have all worked really, really hard to plant those trees, and that provides a fantastic shelter belt between the housing and the rest of the park as well. Provides something nice for people to look at, encourages wildlife into those areas. We're stood at the edge of Noah's Wood, Silverdale Country Park, looking out over the new football pitches and Heritage Park Housing Estate. You can see St Luke's Church off to the right hand side, and the country park snakes around the back of the housing and connects all the way into the back of the church there. The football fields are actually paid for by the housing developers as part of sort of something to give back to the community. The woodland that we're in at the moment, we've named Noah's Wood because the pit that used to be here was called Noah's Ark. You can now see that we're sort of surrounded by lots of woodland and trees, and it's the most established woodland we have on the park.